Good morning to all of you, those of you who are joining us live and those of you who are watching the recording for our Wednesday session here at Namaste Lake Chapala. As always, it is so wonderful to be able to join together with a single intention to remember and to know and to share and to extend the truth that is always true, the truth that does not change. Such a thing seems so strange and impossible in a world where everything changes, where everything is up in the air and never the same. Sameness almost seems boring. The idea that something would always be the same seems like, well, why would I want that? But there is a dynamic sameness, which is the same as saying a dynamic peace. The peace of God is dynamic, and though it always stays the same, it's always at a heightened pitch of excited oneness. Excited oneness. That means it's moving without moving. It's it doesn't change its essence. It's always the same, except there is a dynamism within that oneness that we share. And it's this that we access when we join together, when we come together and just allow that dynamism, that dynamic peace, that dynamic oneness to emerge within and through each one of us. So that's why we join. That's why we come together here every day. And I'm always so grateful to see so many of you who come back day after day because you feel this, you know this, you got this. And so we begin. I want to begin by sharing a little something that came to me last night, of course, when I was in the bathtub. I do my best thinking when I'm in hot water. And this is going to be something that I can almost guarantee no spiritual teacher has ever shared before or thought of before. It's a way of understanding something that I think is completely new, fresh, maybe even brilliant, or maybe slightly interesting. I don't know. You can be the judge of it. So here's the question that came to me last night. Why are you always so thirsty when you come out of a very hot bath? Strange question, isn't it? Why are you so thirsty when you come out of a very hot bath? Well, the answer is very simple. Even though you're in a very hot bath and you don't realize it because you're in this hot water, you're sweating a lot and you're releasing a lot. And because you're in the hot water, you don't realize it. And it's only when you get out that you realize, gosh, I'm really sweating here. And I'm really thirsty. I need a couple of glasses of water. And it's really the same in a spiritual sense as well. We don't realize the cost of our judgments or even our opinions when we're in the illusion, which is what the hot water is. When we are completely immersed, we'll say, in this illusory world, we don't realize how much it's costing us or how much we're sweating. And it's the thirst itself that indicates what it is to cost us. And it's the thirst for God, the longing for oneness that reminds us that the way that we've been thinking, the way that we've been judging and trying to correct our brothers and our sisters is costing us more than we can possibly know. And this is why we're thirsty. This is why we long for the divine. And as Rumi says, don't drink the water. Stay thirsty. Keep that longing at its highest point so that you're reminded this is not where the solution is. I'm never going to quench that thirst with anything of this world. There's only one thing that is going to quench that longing or that thirst, and that is to be one with the beloved, or to realize that I am always one with the beloved. So that just came to me last night, and it seemed appropriate in our discussion on thinking that we could correct our brothers or our sisters, or thinking that we can judge them what is right, what is wrong for them. And as we said, and we're going to come back to this a little bit later, the proper response in any situation when a brother or a sister is sharing their ideas of what they think is or isn't, or not to correct them, because then I'm trying to make myself right and them wrong, but to simply look at them and either verbally or just inwardly to say, I don't know, but I love you. There's no conflict there. There's no rising above and making them smaller. This is what the Holy Spirit does to each one of us. It corrects us with love. It corrects us through devotion. So this morning, I opened up A Course in Miracles, and I came to a section called The Correction of Error in the text, and I thought this is really valuable. This is like an arrow right to the center point of exactly what we're sharing, discussing, learning. So I want to read this, and as I often do, I often change it a little bit to reflect not just brothers, but to honor the feminine as well. So I know a lot of people don't do that, and that's fine too. I'm not correcting anyone. It's just what I do. Okay, so see if you can really feel this, because this, as I said, is right a direct hit to the center of this issue. Here we go. To the ego, it is kind and right and good to point out errors and correct them. This makes perfect sense to the ego, which is unaware of what errors are and what correction is. The ego is unaware of what errors are and what correction is. This is why, from an ego perspective, you can never correct properly. You can never give what is needed in that moment. Errors are of the ego, and correction of errors lies, true correction of errors lies in the relinquishment of the ego. When you correct someone, you're telling them that they are wrong, period. They may be making no sense at the time, and it is certain that if they are speaking from the ego, they will not be making sense. But your task, and here's the key, your task is to tell them that they are right. This is really uncompromising. You do not tell them this verbally if they're speaking foolishly. They need correction at another level, not the ego level, but a higher level, because their error is at another level. They are still right because they are a holy child of God. That's what makes them right, not their opinions, not what they're doing or saying or believing. And so what you're doing is you're looking to the rightness or the wholeness within them that has nothing to do with the error that you've perceived. They are still right because they are a holy child of God. Their ego is always wrong, no matter what it says or does. But that's not where you're focused. If you're focusing on what the ego says or does, guess what? Well, you fall into the same trap, and that's what we've been talking about all week long. Whenever you judge or try to correct your brother or your sister, it is you who needs correction. Period. Once again, that's rule 1 and rule 2. Let me read a little bit more. If you point out the errors in your brother or your sister's ego, you must be seen through your own. Isn't that what I just said? This is just expressing rule 1 and rule 2 in different words. Once again, if you point out the errors in your brother or your sister's ego, you must be seen through your own. Uncompromising. You must be seen through your own. Because the Holy Spirit does not perceive errors. Period. Again, this must be true, since there is no communication between the ego and the Holy Spirit. The ego makes no sense, and the Holy Spirit does not attempt to understand anything that arises from it. Why would you try to make sense of some things and other things when everything that arises from the ego is not true? You see, trying to correct one error in your brother looks past the truth, which is that, number 1, if I'm seeing the error, it's me who needs the correction. And number 2, it's all error. It's all illusion. And the only solution then is to look past it all. I don't know. I love you. That's why that's so effective. Once again, the ego makes no sense, and the Holy Spirit does not attempt to understand anything that arises from it. Since it is not understandable, the Holy Spirit does not judge it, and neither do we, knowing that nothing the ego makes means anything. Nothing the ego makes means anything. Okay, just a couple more sentences now. When you react at all to errors, you are not listening to the Holy Spirit. And isn't that what you want? Isn't that how all errors are really undone? By listening to and following the guidance of the Holy Spirit? The truth within you? That link between you and heaven? Isn't that how all errors are undone? When a brother or a sister behave insanely, you can heal them only by perceiving the sanity or the wholeness within them. Unless this becomes the one way in which you handle all errors, you cannot understand how all errors are undone. In other words, it's not up to you to change your brother or your sister, but merely to accept them as they are. Not on an ego level. You love them completely, but you are really accepting the truth within them, looking past everything that seems to be not true. Now, some of us may be wondering, well, what's the difference between correction and instruction? You know, remember that there are different layers to this. There's level 1, level 2. Let's say that you're the boss of someone in a job, or you're a parent, and you have to instruct them, like, no, there's a better way of doing this particular job. That's different because there's no charge to it. You're not making them wrong. You're just instructing them in how to do it at that level, right? With your child, if your child, to say that I'm not ever going to correct my child means they're going to have a very spoiled child. But to be constantly and continuously listening to the voice of the Holy Spirit within that can help us tell the difference. Whenever we have a charge or whenever we feel ourselves rising above, then I've attacked myself. And this is why I don't know, but I love you is always the only answer. So that's a lot of information, but it's very practical when we just allow it to be simple. I can never judge or correct. My job is to just know, to love them no matter what. What does it say here? I want to read this one part one more time. The part where it says you always make them right. It doesn't matter what it seems to be. You rise above, not making their ego right, but making the truth within them always right. And if you can do that, then you can be sure that you're always seen through the lens of the Holy Spirit and seeing only the Christ. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our dear sister Vicki and let her take it from there. Good morning, Vicki.
Good morning, Jimmy, and thank you for reading that. That was really a very direct passage as well. And it's piggybacking right on what you started with the beginning of the week. So to react to error or the urge to correct are signals that we are in judgment. Now, judgment is what the problem is because judgment makes everything two. When the cause of what seems to be the problem is that we're thinking we're separate in the world of two-ness. So the answer that he gives us is if we can't hear the Holy Spirit when we're in a state of judgment. It's that simple. And a state of judgment and the urge to correct are what projection is again. And all we're asked to do is stop projecting. And that simple switch to I don't know opens our ears to the guidance that's at hand that would help us pragmatically, very practically through any situation. no matter how radical it may appear, if we can get out of the judgmental mind that is calling something an error, shift to the vision, what in the Course he calls Christ's vision, to focus on my brother's holiness as part of myself and listen. It's only in a state of unwillingness to judge, absolutely taking a stand, I will not judge this, that we can hear the immediate guidance that's practical and present. And recognizing the signals of projection, the urge to correct, the urge to get an answer, the reaction to the problem. Those are the same as staying, what you're calling as staying thirsty. If we let ourselves not solve that on an ego level with, oh, this is a good solution, but stay uncomfortable again, then we are receptive to the Holy Spirit. But we must make the passage ourselves before we're any help to what seems like a brother outside of us. We need to get our own judgment out of the way and recognize that's what's coming up and get our own correction at the cause level, not at the effect level. So no matter what seems to be going on, if we're looking at it through the eyes of judgment, separation is all that's going on. I'm separate from God and I'm guilty. Separate from God and I'm guilty. Look at this, look at this, look at this. And the answer is, I see your oneness, your holiness that we share. There is no separation from God. We are one and holy. And in that state, all we have is a giving of the love that we are. And that's the answer. The Holy Spirit guidance will come to each of us in some particular form that is helpful and specific. Was that too around the bush?
No, it was perfect as always. You always bring it back to the practical. And I love how you called it to notice the signals of projection. And that's maybe the key to the beginning, to become aware of these little subtle signals and signs that show us that we are projecting or judging or trying to correct on the level where correction can happen. We the whole idea is to not try and correct anything on that level. And for me, and maybe this is true for others, one of those signals is there's kind of an inward puffing up. Like there, I guess it's what happens when you make yourself right. I'm right about this. And so you feel this inward sort of puffing. But in order for me to be right, guess what? You need to be wrong. And as you said, now we're separate. Now I love how you called it the world of two. The world of two is what I make when I try and correct you on that level, rather than realizing that no correction is necessary on that level because nothing is really happening on that level. My responsibility is simply to focus on where the truth is, on where the happening really is. To, in other words, to see everyone as whole, as the Christ, as love, to see through the facade. Why would I try? Okay, this is a good analogy. Let's say I'm on a movie set, an old Western movie set, and there are all these facades. There's the saloon, the hotel. There's nothing behind it, just the front facade. And I spend all of my time trying to repair the facade. What good am I doing? There's nothing behind it. And it's the same with this. If I'm trying to correct on the level of the error, thinking that I have something that you don't, all I'm doing is playing with the facade. There's nothing really there. My only goal, our only goal, is to focus on what is true and let the truth expand and to be uncompromising with that. Thank you, Vicky. How about you, Teddy? Anything you'd like to share about that?
Well, actually, it reminded me of a message that I got when Jesus asked me to put the sparkly edition and put the term soul back in. What he also told me was to change the clarification of terms, which was at the back of the course, and put it at the front of the course and call it the use of terms rather than the clarification of terms. And what he said to me was, clarity is a function of light, and light is the realm of the Holy Spirit. So when people want clarity, they need to turn to the Holy Spirit. This is the way I use the terms. Like, this is the meaning the terms have to me and how I use them in the book. But the clarity actually comes from them asking within and having the Holy Spirit clarify things for them. So that was one of the reasons why I changed the clarification of terms to the use of terms and put it at the front. So people, before they read the course, would understand how Jesus was using the terms, because he doesn't use them in the same manner that we normally do here. And why he said, don't call it the clarification, call it the use of terms, because clarity is a function of light, and light and strength are the realm of the Holy Spirit. And he will provide clarity for anybody who asks about the use of the terms or whatever's going on within the book for them. And what we were saying before about how do you know, like, you're in the egoic realm. And to me, it's based on feeling. When you feel not right within yourself, there's an error being made in your mind, because the mind is what affects the body. The body doesn't affect the mind. It's the exact opposite way. So when you feel a little off or something, you understand, like, you're listening to the ego and his unreasonability and his unreasonableness in order to get you to not pay attention to the Holy Spirit. So that's one of the things, that's one of the ways, Jesus even talks about, how do you feel? How do you feel about this? And he uses feelings as a way for you to understand which voice you're actually listening to, the ego or the Holy Spirit. And also, I want to just say thank you, James, because I spoke to Cami about the event on the 5th. And, he mentioned that you were going to be part of it.
Yes.
And he asked me if it was okay that it be a fundraiser for the Sparkly edition, which is
Oh,
fine.
cool. Oh, that's beautiful. Hey,
Right.
just out of curiosity, when they took out the word soul in the original Course in Miracles, what did they replace it with?
He replaced it with spirit. The word soul was in over 205 times. And unless it was in a direct biblical quotation, he took it out and replaced it with the word spirit, with the explanation that spirit and soul were very similar in understanding. But when Jesus talks about what spirit is, and when he talks about what soul is, he uses them differently. They're not the same. Soul is what we are. He says, you are soul and only soul. Your only reality is soul. Now, that quote was taken out of the book entirely, which to me is pretty important when you're being told your only reality as a soul. And he didn't replace that with anything. He just took that whole section out. So
You're talking about Ken Wapnick.
right. So Jesus wanted the word soul to be put back in the way he used it, and then not to clarify the things, but this is the way he uses them in the book. And clarity, being a function of light, is within the perspective and the realm of the Holy Spirit. And people are being asked to learn in the course how to contact, that it's contactable, and that the Holy Spirit will speak to anyone who asks. So you get clarity on your whole situation, what life is about for you and what situations are about for you. And it always comes down to separation. So when you experience the Holy Spirit in the clarity of the communication, there is no separation. So you're getting the experience that Jesus is asking that we all have in order for us to know our reality, rather than to continue to think that space and time is a real place and there's something we must do with it, other than just learn that it's not real, and we can depart space and time through our total understanding of what reality is.
Beautiful. Thank you, Teddy.